Hi, you guys. So, today I wanted to talk to you about some research that I did about 5 months ago. I've been wanting to share it with you guys for this whole time, but I just haven't really known how to go about it. Uh, a lot of the time has been spent with me trying to summarize and condense what I wrote, just to make it, a little bit more easy and clean and short because our attention spans are dying. But every time I tried to take something out or summarize it, make it a little bit shorter, I felt like I was just stripping the context of what was really important. And so I wanted to go ahead and read to you a paper that I wrote a few months back. And the subject that it is referring to is known as spiritual psychosis. 5 months ago, I had no idea what spiritual psychosis was. I knew kind of about what psychosis was, like about people just maybe going crazy, but I didn't know what spiritual psychosis was, and I had never even heard about it, heard it referenced to before that. And what was crazy was I came upon it on a YouTube comment underneath a video, and it dove me into a huge rabbit hole. I honestly think that this is such an important topic for all of us to know about. I think it's very important for us to single-handedly have the responsibility to teach ourselves about it, but a lot of us might not know about it, and some of us that might be introduced to it might be told to veer away from that. Don't worry about that. It could never happen to us, that kind of thing. One of the reasons why I wanted to research this was because I was worried that a YouTuber that I watch and admire, I have watched her for years and years and years, I'm worried that she's fallen victim to spiritual psychosis. The comment that was left under a video was, "Spiritual psychosis is real and I wish more people knew about it." That was all the comment said. And I was like, what the heck? What is spiritual psychosis? And when I started researching into it, I was like, oh my God. Oh my goodness. It opened my eyes to just a world I've never even imagined. So I wanted to share what I learned with you because it has truly helped and impacted me in more ways than any self-help book I've read has taught me some stuff. And as I had mentioned, since it's been a while since I've written this, other celebrities and other people have been rumored to be kind of in the same boat. I don't know. You guys know me, I'm not necessarily a drama channel, so I don't want to focus on the individuals themselves, but more so the concept behind why I focused or was cued in onto those individuals. But it has to do with spiritual psychosis. Once I grasped this information, I was able to look at other people through a different lens and groups through a different lens, influencers, celebrities, churches, religions, like all these different things. I was able to put a different thinking cap on and be like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And this is why our sanity and our mind state, our state of being is absolutely so important. And we need to understand that we are the ones that harness control over it. And if we don't, we can really lose ourselves. We can fall under spiritual psychosis. And if an individual falls deep enough, it's really hard for them to get back out. I just wanted to read what I wrote on spiritual psychosis, and I hope that it teaches you or brings some new perspectives to your eyes, to your life. But yeah, without further ado, this is about spiritual psychosis. Becoming spiritual. Before diving too deep, too fast into the vastness of spiritual psychosis, I wanted to start from the beginning, at point A. We all remember a time where life was, well, just life. Our days were filled with school, homework, sports, playing outside in the dirt, cleaning our rooms, simply exploring life. Some of us may have been introduced to religion as a child, and others a little later on life, if at all. We were at a time in life where we didn't understand the difference between the soul, the mind, the body. We didn't know the difference from our subconscious mind to our ego. Those were just words, and their definitions didn't have any role in our lives. We were too busy picking our noses or scraping our knees. Slowly, different aspects of life started to trickle in. We started to build relationships, going through puberty, learning about the world, math, and science. We started experiencing the loss of friends and loved ones, both physically and mentally. I see it to be right around this time where most of us start to harness and understand the beginning of spirituality. We start to uncover the spiritual aspect of life and all its experiences, some through the help of religion and others through different books. I personally remember my mother being the one to start teaching me about being spiritual. We might start learning about karma and how a positive attitude creates positive energies around us, as well as dark and negative energy. We are introduced to its weight. Even those that may not believe in God still understand we all have a spirit deep within us that cannot be ignored. All of a sudden, magic starts to happen. We are told certain series of numbers brings forth good luck. 1111, 123, 333. We see rainbow as being a loved one smiling down from heaven. A special red bird becomes a signal of strength and prosperity. The world starts to reveal more colors and capabilities. Now life is no longer just a walk in the park, but an adventure filled with synchronicities and messages to decode. This, my friends, is where I see every human's starting point to be. A fork in the road. One arrow pointing towards sanity and the other towards spiritual psychosis. The start of spiritual experiences. With the help of textbooks and the bottomless pit of the internet, millions of people are influenced to gain a better understanding of spirituality, apply its practices, and potentially wait for the magic to unfold. There are many different reasons for this desire. A better life, less stress, more knowledge, the promise of enlightenment, the ability to teach and help others. The reasons are endless. When an individual starts to become connected with the human spirit and soul as opposed to the material or physical things, spiritual experiences may begin to happen. A moment in time where we feel something magical has happened. Seeing your lucky number, finding a coin, having deja vu, a butterfly flying by and thinking it's a lost loved one. What is important to understand is that a spiritual experience is a moment in time, something we experience and then move along with our day. Understanding spiritual emergence. Once an individual starts to acquire more knowledge and a better understanding of their spiritual self as well as the world around them, they experience something known as spiritual emergence. That individual is now going through a process of their own awakening, strengthening their spiritual growth, ultimately tapping into their higher human potential. Life is now seen through a dual lens. They are beginning to see the totality of everything, both spiritual and regular reality, while remaining grounded. They have the ability to have a moment happen where they can see it as a normal thing or see it as how it could be a special sign. For example, when I find a penny on the ground, I am able to see it as being both just a penny on the ground someone dropped, as well as it being a sign from my mother that I'm at the right place at the right time. Both possibilities are seen and respected. A rainbow can be seen as the natural occurrence that happens once it rains, or a sign from an ancestor that they are looking over you. What is important to understand here now is that with spiritual emergence, there is a dual lens to reality, which allows the individual to stay grounded and remain cool, calm, and collected. Again, there is a dual lens that is applied to reality. Spiritual psychosis. Remember that fork in the road we talked about? Sanity and spiritual psychosis? Well, we are now descending into the darkness of our rabbit hole. Up until this point, we could still see the brightness of the sky and feel its warmth. So grab hands because it might get a little sinister. Spiritual psychosis begins when we lose our dual lens to reality, when our thoughts and emotions become so affected that we lose touch with reality. Everything is only spiritual. We can no longer see the normal reality. This could be a sign, but it could be nothing, disappears, and every bird becomes a sign, a signal. Every coin, every rainbow. Now the universe is speaking magic 24/7. Every moment, every dream, every person is now a golden light sparkling its magical messages among the earth. All is now a spiritual experience, not just a moment in time. A person who is in spiritual psychosis has the inability to perceive reality and understand how things truly are. They lose the ability to understand how things can be perceived by those not in spiritual emergence, how a normal everyday today person might see things who aren't even spiritual at all. Signs of spiritual psychosis: increased paranoia, losing touch with reality, thinking that everyone else is crazy and never seeing something as just is, thinking that no one else in the world will ever get it. Having an identity transformation. This could be seen as being born again. Some may feel as though they are actually God and now have a mission to save the world. A new identity gives this individual power. They now have a role and responsibility that they have to take on. In many cases, if psychedelics are used during certain practices or ceremonies, this will be more common than many people would ever expect. Attaching fear to reality. The world now becomes a matrix that one needs to escape. The world becomes fear-based. What was once seen as a spiritual journey is now a dangerous game. Now, this can be dangerous due to the fact that seeing the world as a matrix can take away accountability from that individual. Some people will see people in their everyday lives as NPCs, non-playing characters. Zoning in on the enemy. All focus and energy is zoned in on which is perceived to be an enemy. This could be the police, social media, the government, a church, someone we may not like, or somebody that doesn't like us. There will be an urge to save the rest of the world from this said enemy, and it will become an obsession. Come to this side. That's the dark side. Another sign of spiritual psychosis is change in mannerisms and vocabulary. All vocabulary of an individual will change. Their way of speaking. Nothing can ever be talked about without it being spiritual. Isolation. From people, places, hobbies. An individual might move far away to be with like-minded people. An individual will no longer partake in old hobbies, like bike riding, dancing, going to the pool, hanging out with friends and family. Another sign of spiritual psychosis is thought stopping. An individual will force themselves to stop thinking a certain way and replace it with a new set of beliefs they now live by. For example, if someone thinks to themselves, maybe this isn't a good idea, they immediately take note of that thought they're thinking and replace them with, I have to save humanity. Another could be, I shouldn't be partaking in this drug, and stops that to convince themselves with, Mother Nature needs to teach me. Intense creativity. The inability to stop creating. Becoming obsessed with creating arts and poems or spending hours and hours on specific projects. Some may experience the inability to stop writing. They will write books upon books or create songs upon songs without the ability to stop. Now I'm going to take a pause from my reading real quick just because I kind of wanted to explain a little bit on why I started researching this next topic. I don't know if you guys have heard about or seen or heard in the news of certain celebrities being accused of joining a cult or being with a group that has cult-like practices. And one of the things that came up while researching for spiritual psychosis is how cults and groups and religions and just different people will be a part of a group that they don't necessarily see as being a cult. But what I learned was it's not necessarily the word cult that I'm focused on, it's the practices within a group. I'm going to go back to my paper, but I just kind of wanted to put that in there in case somebody's like, yo, why all of a sudden are you jumping into talking about a cult? It's simply because through cults, just learning and researching about cults, I learned how people can become a part of one without them even knowing. A leader of a certain group might have a cult-like mentality, but not even know that because they themselves might be under spiritual psychosis. So when it comes to cults and groups and certain practices, spiritual psychosis is such a key factor that I wanted to kind of explain why and show you guys that if there are certain people that join a certain group, it might not be considered a cult, but it's the practices that are happening within it that can completely lead an individual to spiritual psychosis. And I think that's what's happening to some of these influencers and celebrities that I'm seeing. They're becoming a part of a group. They're joining an organization that has a following. It seems to be positive and spiritual and uplifting, and the leaders seem to be all-knowing and encompassing, but in reality, it's the practices that are slowly ripping that person away from actual reality and into a state of delusion and paranoia. So, I wanted to define what a cult is. A cult is a term for a relatively small group which is typically led by a charismatic and self-appointed leader who excessively controls its members, requiring unwavering devotion to a set of beliefs and practices. In a documented lecture, Stephen Hassan, whom is known as one of the world's foremost experts on mind control, cults, and similar destructive organizations, explains his definition of a cult as being a pyramid structure, authoritarian group with someone or some group that's at the top and has total control and power. He also mentions that a cult will use mind control to indoctrinate people to be dependent and obedient. Stephen himself escaped a cult he became a part of known as the Moon Organization, aka the Moonies. He became so involved that he was in charge of recruiting and indoctrinating others to join the cult as well. He knows how these things work inside and out. He knows and understands the devastating impact of a cult on an individual is something that cannot be ignored. Stephen mentioned that any, if not most, of the individuals that become a part of a cult are very intelligent, idealistic, kind, and loving people who don't want what happened. They just happened to be mind controlled. Everyone inside of a cult, including the leader, are typically under spiritual psychosis, which makes it impossible for them to wake up and understand what they are part of. Now, you might be wondering, how would a cult leader or a person even manipulate an individual to the point of spiritual psychosis? Well, my friend, it's simple practices of mind control. Stephen Hassan explains that it doesn't matter the belief system itself. It's the methodology of practices of the group. This could be religious, political, therapeutic, or business. It doesn't matter the beliefs within the system. It's their practices within. In order to make an individual dependent and obedient, only a few things need to be controlled. Control of behavior, control of thoughts, control of feelings, and control of information. In order to fulfill control over those four things, a few other things need to be controlled. Control of sleep, control of food, control of privacy. Rules and regulations need to be set and followed. No more seeing friends and family that aren't like-minded. No negative thoughts are allowed within or about the group, therefore thought stopping will be implemented. Slowly transforming a new habit to a new identity, thus leading to no critics, including yourself. One must not listen to anyone else, for they are on the dark side. Soon, the individual will look at people within their group or the group leader as being all-knowing, almost godlike, or the only ones to understand. They know all the secrets to the universe anyway, so they must never look a different way. This is why it becomes so easy to slip into spiritual psychosis. Without negative thoughts, one's reality cannot be tested. An intelligent person needs to have negative thoughts. It shows them where danger might lurk, or it shows them that something isn't okay, that something's not right. In one of our last essays, we dug into the effects of LSD and the government's practices of mind control. We know this stuff is real. It's very, very easy to control someone's mind. Why do you think they erased every bit of research findings on Operation Midnight Climax? Why do you think the CIA to this day claims they've never even discovered much about mind control? That it doesn't exist. People are afraid to think about mind control. Millions will deny it, or even worse, ignore the concept completely. Stephen himself never thought he would be a part of a cult, and it took him stepping back. It could never happen to me is one of the silliest things an individual could ever think. One of the main tactics a group, a government, a business, a religion, any group will use on its members to increase their dependence or obedience is known as phobia indoctrination. This is where irrational fears are programmed that if you don't follow the group, an individual will believe X, Y, and Z will happen, especially if they try to leave the group or question any of its practices. This will 110% lead to spiritual psychosis. An individual will be completely parted from the reality that's still on the other side. Earlier, we mentioned that one of the signs of spiritual psychosis is a transformation of identity. With a cult, its mind control tactics also create a pseudo-identity and suppress their true self. If that true self is suppressed enough, it can be impossible to escape psychological psychosis, and an individual will have the inability to ever ground back to reality. They will go from one version of psychosis to another. So for example, someone might switch from a church to intense spirituality, or leaving a specific group and becoming obsessed with escaping the matrix. In Stephen's lecture, he explains that he didn't ask enough questions. When other people would ask him if he was in a cult or religious group, he would say no. He was told he wasn't by the cult itself. He truly had no interest in dropping out of school, losing contact with his friends and family, but due to their tactics and practices, due to sleep deprivation and psychoactive and non-psychoactive drug use, isolation, lack of food, and their use of hypnotic techniques and patterning, he entered spiritual psychosis. The outside world started to turn evil. He mentions that if you want to help someone understand mind control, you want to give them information. From the start of it all, you needed information to make an informed choice, and he wasn't given that. Instead, he believed everything he was told and didn't ask enough questions. They knew what they were doing to him all along. Not only did it work, but he began to recruit others to join the Moon organization alongside him. With all this being said, you might say, well, Sarah, how the heck do we avoid this mess? How do we avoid falling into a cult? How do we avoid falling into the wrong group? How do we avoid spiritual psychosis while exploring and learning about life? It is so important for us to maintain our dual lens. We need to be able to differentiate between both the spiritual aspects of life and its normalcy. Where attention goes, energy grows. We must not give an enemy the power and energy. Keep in mind all of the possibilities. It could be this or it could be that, but we must not lose our understanding by closing that dual lens. That very loss of our understanding can too cause spiritual psychosis. We must always remember that I could be wrong too. If you already find yourself in spiritual emergence, which we covered earlier, please be careful with drug use if you choose to experiment with them. Drugs or an experience with them can single-handedly cause psychosis. This is why I worry so deeply for the younger generations, who are all exposed to so much through social media. And I see all over the place younger and younger individuals experimenting with drugs, even if it's just smoking weed. The human mind is so delicate. Why do you think so many want control over it? We need to be careful and aware of the information we are feeding ourselves and the people we are getting it from. The way individuals look up to their cult leaders is the same way individuals look up to YouTubers, content creators, or celebrities. After doing this research, there are a handful of people that I am now questioning if I should still follow or study from, as I truly think there are more people under spiritual psychosis than we truly realize. They no longer have a dual lens nor perceive life with it. They see themselves as strictly messengers and people that need to wake up and save the world, help everybody escape the matrix. I can only recognize it now after doing so much research. It's a wild world out there, my friends, and we need to protect our minds as best we can. Too many of us hang on to what we listen to and believe in it. Another thing to take note is that spiritual psychosis can happen at any moment. It can happen when we are just children. It can happen while we are developing a sense of self. Spiritual psychosis can happen if we start to question established certainties, myths, or beliefs. Now, it can also happen while exploring or experimenting with new myths, ideas, or beliefs. If you are in a new environment or your reality around you has completely changed, for example, moving to a new country or even during the lockdowns when everybody's normal life was flipped upside down, it can happen if an individual is grappling with conflicting ideas. In regards to the people we choose to follow, we need to be aware and understand the dangers of drugs and shamans. Not everyone who claims they are a shaman is well experienced, if even experienced at all. Everyone is so unique and different, and drugs can impact people in such different ways. We cannot put blind faith into a teacher or a shaman or even a friend, thinking that they will be able to ground an individual back. Some shamans will keep people lost in the sea of their minds. My friends, it is possible to be aware and informed of the matrix without paranoia. With all that being said, we must keep our heads on our shoulders and keep a rope around our waist while diving into rabbit holes, and be a little bit more wise. I want to personally apologize for falling victim. As I know I've never been under spiritual psychosis, I do feel as though I lost my dual lens for certain moments. There have been many times looking back now, especially during the pandemic, that I was only seeing the dark side. Only playing the game of the matrix and not seeing all possibilities, thus leading to my emotions taking center stage as opposed to putting my thinking cap on before starting research and reading the next headlines. Not saying we aren't in a matrix, we just have to keep track of all possibilities of reality without becoming fixated and losing our dual lens. Maybe it's time we start looking within, letting our intuition guide us, not the next guy on the screen. We have fallen into the habit of relying on somebody else to tell us the answers or show us where to go, making us think we really are the bad ones or we shouldn't even trust ourselves. Always remember, ask questions and question the answers you are given. Be the one that is in control of your mind and its choices. And please understand, it is okay for our minds to be sober to experience what life has to offer. I promise I know how hard this can be. Life is a roller coaster, to say the least. But we've got this. I believe in humanity. We just need to remain mellow and do the best we can. Be aware and alert and keep moseying on down the river. So I really thought this was so important to share with you guys. One, because, I mean, a part of life is becoming independent. We get older, we start venturing out on our own and finding new ideas and new friends and new people and new places and new sets of beliefs. I know for a fact the belief system of my house when my parents were alive is not how it is now. It's not at all. And I think that's another really important aspect that I want to mention to you guys is that it can be you can be so vulnerable to spiritual psychosis while trying to navigate after losing a loved one, especially if it's somebody who has such like a strong hold on you as a person yourself. So like, for example, everything I did, from the choices I made to the decisions I made to what I ate to what I wore, I always had my parents in the back of my mind. But now that they're no longer here, it's like I'm open to a whole new world that has so many different ideas, groups, organizations, thoughts, perspectives, drugs. Like there's so much out there, and each one of those will hold, like they will put a corset around your mind and just squeeze the life out of you until you're like molded into this different position that's not natural. It's not you, and you can't even think straight. The strings have been tied too tight around your mind that you're just like, God. I really think this is such an important topic when it comes, like I said, to losing a loved one. I know for a fact there's times where if I didn't keep my dual lens on, I probably would have not gone crazy, but I would have been under spiritual psychosis, and then I probably would have just been spewing all of the BS, not BS, but, spewing all of my stuff onto you guys. And I think that's another thing why this is so important, is because after reading this, or after doing all this research, not only was I able to look out at other people who have either been on the headlines for being worried about what group they're now a part of, or their practices, or what they're preaching now, I'm also able to step back and look at myself and be like, yo, is what you're saying coming from an innate place, or have you been conditioned to think this way? Influenced to think this way? Has your mind been controlled to think this way? Has phobia indoctrination been implemented onto you to make you feel, think, or act this way? So it's really interesting. It's very eye-opening. And it's crazy because I would have never known about this if I wouldn't have seen that one comment under a YouTube video that just said, yo, spiritual psychosis is real. And now I can sit back and think, holy moly. And the reason why I also was kind of hesitant about this is because some of the like signs of spiritual psychosis could also be a sign of like depression or mania or panic attacks or anxiety. Like, do you get what I mean? So that's why like I kind of think about it to myself and I'm like, damn, imagine an individual who is experiencing all those things but doesn't realize that they're under spiritual psychosis. Instead, they'll think the world's out to get them. They need to go to a therapist or a doctor, and then that doctor or therapist may prescribe them X, Y, and Z. And now they're trying to fix a problem with the wrong solution. I feel like there might be a lot of people, of teachers, of influencers who are under spiritual psychosis, and they don't understand that it could be spiritual psychosis. And it might not be anxiety or depression, The anxiety and depression may be a side effect of spiritual psychosis. Like, do you kind of get where I'm at when I say this is such an important concept? Like, it really, really is. Because I have seen people who actually are under spiritual psychosis, and if you try to tell them that they are under spiritual psychosis, or that they may be a part of a organization that has cult-like mentality, they are so far gone. Their dual lens is gone. It's just gone. They can't see any other possibility than the possibility that they see, that they've been conditioned to believe throughout their group, or the people that they've been listening to, or the books that they've been reading. And then, tangent time. Like, if you don't want to hear my extra thoughts, you can stop the video now. But this is why social media is so worrisome to me. Going to school is already a form of indoctrination, depending on where you're going, right? You have an organization teaching you a set of beliefs, concepts, and practices, and you latch onto them and you go away. You go and live life. Think about what's happening on social media. All of the different people just spewing different things on social media. And now the children are involved. You can't see a baby without a tablet. So by the time they're 8 years old to 12 years old to 16 years old, best believe they've already found somebody to listen to online. And who knows if that person's not under spiritual psychosis. So now we have an 8-year-old little boy, a 13-year-old little girl, all under spiritual psychosis because of the internet. The bottomless pit of the internet. And parents don't really care what kids do nowadays. They think, oh, it's okay. I have a parental control on. Like, you know what I mean? And I have a feeling that half of the celebrities out there are under spiritual psychosis, and they just make it seem like they're normal because their management team keeps posting normal celebrity stuff on their social media accounts. But in reality, these people are off in the mountains of Lord knows where doing ayahuasca, and, you know, then they come back and spread all their messages and then influence other people to come and join them. And don't even let me get started on some of these organizations that ask people for money. So imagine being under spiritual psychosis and then some cult leader or leader telling you, I need you to give me $10,000 for me to teach you the next way to unleash all the magic in your brain. People will throw their money to these people. 1, because they think they're doing a favor. 2, because they're under spiritual psychosis and think that that's what it will take. That's the next step. And it is so sad. But I don't want to make this video too long. It is a Sunday after all, so maybe it is remember the 5th of November. Oh my gosh, there's a reason. See? Okay, that's where the dual N comes in. Remember the 5th of November, V for Vendetta. Have you guys seen that movie? Crazy cool movie. A little bit too intense. I think I need to watch it about 3 more times for me to really wrap my head around it. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say. If you guys have any ideas, questions, concerns, like anything, let me know in the comments. I do want this to kind of be an open discussion, you know? I don't want you to just watch this and then just be like, okay, bye, and close your laptop. Like, what do you think? You know? Have you ever lost your dual lens? Have you started to experience spiritual emergence where you're starting to see spiritual signs, but then also kind of like, well, I could see how it also might be this? Do you see the same set of numbers over and over again? Like, I'm not trying to take away from the fact that this world is magical, that I think we live in a simulation. So don't even get me started on my ideas. But the factual standpoint that I'm at right now is that there are so many ideas and perspectives and groups and beliefs out there. And spiritual psychosis is real. Our mind can be manipulated so easily that if you take anything away from this, please just let it be that harness your mind. Be the one to control what goes into your mind. Govern your own mind. Don't let social media govern it. Don't let the news govern it. Don't let your friends or family govern it. Like, you are the controller of the computer that you have in your head. Don't let it get sick with messed up information. You know how like computers start going slow because like you clicked on the wrong link and read the wrong thing? We got to be in control, all right? Yes, and as I always like to say, my favorite quote, always ask questions and question the answers you are given. So, farewell, my friends, and I hope you have an amazing day.